the good thing is now suddenly audio's become cool. I mean, I don't know, the last 1 year and post-COVID, really, I mean, suddenly audio's become cool. Audio companies are getting great valuations. They're getting bought up all over the world, and suddenly, things like Clubhouse and, platforms like that have suddenly made audio cool once again. Right? Podcasts, see how they have grown in the last year or two. And you suddenly find that people all over the world are listening to you, and you thought you were just creating almost like a blog, an audio form of a blog for yourself, and a couple of people, friends, family would listen to it and so on, and you have 10,000, 20,000 people listening to you every day. We started a broadcasting business, and suddenly we have 7 million listens per month.
Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a vodcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. If you're new to our channel, please consider subscribing to it and hit the bell icon so that you never miss an episode. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very, very senior corporate professional from India, Ramesh Menon. Ramesh, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashutosh.
Ramesh is the CEO of radio and digital audio of HT Media. He's worked in FMCG, retail, and telecom with organizations like the Future Group, Pepsico, Colgate, Palmolive, ITC, and others. So, Ramesh, let's talk about HT Media. Let's start with trying to understand what goes into building a strong radio stroke media brand.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ashutosh. It's a pleasure being here. I've listened to a lot of your podcasts, and I think the kind of insights that you've got all of us from various people across the world is great.
Thank you.
As far as the question is concerned on building a strong brand in media and radio, I think more than anything else, like everything else, it is an understanding of where the consumer is going and being able to sort of read the trends in terms of what's emerging and what's current. I think that's the difference between the ones who are successful today and the ones who are not successful, or the ones who are sort of, on their way out. They're able to read the trends and able to sort of keep up with the trends or remain current, or at least push the agenda on, what is going to be current in the future. Right. And more importantly, brands that survive are the ones that are able to do this entire thing in a very agile way. And today's context, straddling multiple formats and multiple media. There is no scope for just being a radio brand or a print brand or a television brand. I think you need to straddle multiple formats and multiple mediums.
Correct.
And not sort of get stuck in what you've been successful at in the past. So that's really, I think, what goes into making a good radio brand for the future or a media brand for the future. And it's really not very different from what it has been in the past, except that the timelines that you have for success or possible failure is actually much shorter than it was in the past. That's really what I would say.
Very interesting. So, when I was doing a little reading about you and the industry, it took me back to when I was in college and doing my business school, and I used to go to All India Radio, and I used to, do Forces Request, and, there's only one radio channel. I used to do book reviews on All India Radio, etc., and earns 15 rupees or whatever the value was. But over the years, and you are now running a channel, how have customer expectations changed from the radio?
I think customers' expectations have changed dramatically. I don't know whether radio itself has changed dramatically enough, right? And that's really the fundamental issue, right? Therefore, customers have started moving out into other formats or other mediums. Traditional radio has largely stayed where it is. And consumers have sort of gone elsewhere, gone to streaming platforms, gone to YouTube, digital audio, and now, thankfully enough, podcasts as well. Bringing them back, I think, is what's critical for radio businesses or audio businesses. By being relevant to this new age customer. These customers have changed dramatically. Their attention spans are smaller, shorter. They have multiple choices. There is greater interactivity between mediums. Earlier, it used to be static, one medium, you're there and you're doing only that. Today, you keep jumping from one medium to the other. You go from YouTube to something else to streaming platforms, so there's a lot more interactivity. And somehow, I think as traditional, terrestrial brands or physical brands, we have not been able to make that change. And that's really what's going to change in the next few years. Has changed in the West, has started changing in India as well, but I think that's going to change dramatically. That greater interactivity and us leading that interactivity and making that happen. Right? That's really what customer expectation is. And like you said, your own podcast, the moment it goes beyond a certain length, customers switch off or fall off, right? And that's their attention span. I mean, between more than 20 minutes or 25 minutes, people start thinking, oh, I have something else to do, or something else comes as a distraction. So that's the way it is. And I think we need to realize that and make sure that as organizations, as media organizations, as traditional media organizations, we are making that change in our formats as well.
Very interesting. So, that leads me to my next question. And I think you answered some of it already, which is that, how are traditional channels like print TV and radio adapting to the incredible number of digital channels that have all come over everywhere? Are you transitioning to digital, or are you going to stay with your old norms?
I frankly don't think anybody has choice anymore. This was a question that could well have been debated, has been debated multiple times, whether you should do it or not. I think we've reached a stage now, especially post-COVID, saying there is no choice. I mean, it's like those memes that went across which said, what caused your digital transformation? Was it COVID or was it your organizational management? It's really, COVID that's spurring it on and making sure that you are, if you have not, if you've resisted for long. So the transformation is happening. It has happened across the world. In media, if you look at it, you look at the Washington Post, or you look at the New York Times, or you look at any old newspaper house in Europe, or old traditional media house in Europe, everybody has transformed themselves, and everybody is far more digital than physical, right? And that same change is happening. Our digital, news businesses are growing, 20 times as fast as everything else. I mean, they've doubled in the revenues over the last year. And that's a change that's happening, and something that, I don't think any of us can stop. I mean, the real challenge is to make sure that you're pushing it fast enough and other people are not getting ahead of you in the same process. So more people are online for news, for entertainment than ever before. Like we said earlier, the consumers got shorter and shorter of attention span. So formats have to change. You have to be multi-medium. The brand has to be available across mediums. It has to be relevant across mediums, and we can't really be wedded to any one format or medium. And really, we have to undo that obsession or attachment that we all had to the one medium that made us successful, right? And from an organizational point of view, that's the key to change. I mean, making sure that you're now relevant to this new consumer, and all of us are doing that. I think. Different organizations are at different stages in that process. But in the next couple of years, I think, everybody would have either transited to a new format or a multimedia, multi-platform format, or they would have got left behind, being a niche somewhere. So we are doing it. And so also in the radio business, I mean, you can't anymore be just a traditional radio broadcaster, terrestrial radio broadcaster. You have to be digital. You have to be available wherever you can. You have to be anytime, anywhere. You can't just, have a program on air and have an RJ there and assume that people will come and listen to you. So that's the change that's happening, and hopefully we'll be able to do it faster. This second wave is actually another message to us saying that change fast, right? Otherwise, your expiry date is coming soon.
Fascinating. So, again, I'd love to get a response to my question on this one, that, at one stage, everyone was saying video or television was dying, and everything was moving to the radio because, people are listening to when they're driving, etc. And now with the onslaught of the shorts of the TikToks, etc. of the world, suddenly they're saying video is back again. What are your thoughts on this?
Video was always a cool thing, has been for a while now, and everybody, when you join an organization or when you are part of an organization, they're asking the question, how much video are you doing? The good thing is now suddenly audio has become cool. I mean, I don't know, the last 1 year and post-COVID, really, I mean, suddenly audio is become cool. Audio companies are getting great valuations. They're getting bought up all over the world, and suddenly, things like Clubhouse and, platforms like that have suddenly made audio cool once again. Right? Podcasts, see how they have grown in the last year or two. And you suddenly find that people all over the world are listening to you, and you thought you were just creating almost like a blog, an audio form of a blog for yourself, and a couple of people, friends, family would listen to it and so on, and you have 10,000, 20,000 people listening to you every day. We started a broadcasting business, and suddenly we have 7 million listens per month.
Wow.
Right? I mean, we never expected, and a lot of our programming was actually programming that we had created for radio, which had limited shelf life, limited reach, limited geographical reach, limited in terms of time relevance. But suddenly you put the same thing out in podcasts, edited for podcasts, and then you find millions of people listening to it all over the world. Right? So that's the transformation that's happening, and I think we have to be conscious about it. We have to make ourselves relevant in this kind of a situation, and I think organizations more and more are doing that, and we are as well.
Wonderful. So I'm going to now switch gears a little bit. You've been an FMCG person for a long time. You worked in several multinational companies. So I'm going to ask you from some perspectives, wearing that hat as the CEO of one of India's major radio and audio companies. A lot of companies are keeping money for social media. How is social media changing advertising, which channels like you rely on?
I think as more and more consumers get onto different platforms of social media, that's becoming the single most important place where they discover your content.
Okay.
Right? And since consumers are there, publishers are following consumers there, and a lot of advertising therefore has moved there as well. The task before all of us is really to, as publishers, to get people from there onto our own platforms. And for us, the challenge is how can you get more and more out of these channels or social media platforms, and how can you funnel them into your own platforms?
Okay.
And how well you do that will really be the will really give you a in terms of what you can monetize or how you can monetize will really depend on how well you do that. Right? Otherwise, the social media channels and social media platforms will monetize it for themselves. How do you make sure that you are getting platforms and making people engage on your own platform? And can you do that well enough to make sure that you are getting a share of the advertising pie, which otherwise will go to either the search platform or the social media platform. So what are you doing on your platform to make it engaging enough? What are you doing on your platform to make it responsive enough, make it interesting enough for consumers to come and land on yourself, rather than landing on a social media platform and discovery? And in the meantime, maybe making sure that as much of discovery happens there, and you're leading them onto your own platform. That's really, I think, what all of our challenges are.
Very interesting. And for someone who runs 7 million listens per month on podcasts, how do you see the radio, which is your channel, competing with the major podcast platforms?
I think it's also about like we said, multi-platform. You have to make sure that there are radio listeners moving on to platforms. So one is appointment listening, the other is anytime, anywhere. So how do you make sure that if there is a great radio program or there is an audio program, or can you make sure that it is there on radio as well as podcasts? Can you lead from one to the other? And can you do more on radio regarding podcasts, on podcasts regarding what's happening? And really, when we started this business, we were actually repurposing radio content, right? Initially, in the initial days, first step was to really take all of the content that we had created over many years and put them into podcasts. And we were shocked at the response. So, while we had shelved and put all of these into God knows into hard drives all over the place and lost some of it. The moment we put it online, we edited and put it online, saw a huge response to everything from devotional to horror to storytelling to poetry. We saw fabulous response. So ultimately, what is a radio company? Radio company is a content creator.
Correct.
But as content creators, look at yourself as content creators, not just for a terrestrial broadcast. It's almost like what we used to say in either the beverage business or the or even the newspaper business. The shelf life of your product is very short, right? The moment thirst is there, if you're not available, then you're not there. And the moment you've consumed it, it's over. Right? It was the same thing with terrestrial radio. I mean, if you aren't there when the program is going on, you've finished. You've lost a consumer. So how do you make that product available? How do you give it reach? And how do you give it life? And that's really what podcasts have done. And so a radio creator can be a great content creator for podcasts as well, because he understands audio, the medium. And that's what we've tried to do, make every one of our RJs podcasters. We've sort of democratize podcasting by teaching everybody podcasting.
Amazing.
Right? So that's really what I think radio brands need to do. And that's, I think, what content creators need to do, and look at themselves as content creators rather than looking at themselves as an RJ or anything of that.
So what you're really telling me is that there seems to be now a transition taking place between radio channels and podcast channels. And given the incredible reach you have as a radio channel, your audience is much larger.
Absolutely. And leading one to the other. I think that's more critical.
Very interesting. So one more question for you on your digital business and radio business before I move to the next segment. This is the generation of the millennials and the Gen Zs, and I think they are really going to change the world that people of my generation seem to have messed up quite a bit. How are millennials and Gen Zs changing the radio business or the podcasting business?
Oh, I think more than anything else, they're giving you a warning. They're telling you that change, or I'm anyway changing.
Okay.
Right. So I think, even at home, your son or daughter keeps telling you that, that his or her tastes and her formats and her platforms are very different from yours. If you're not going to be changing, you're going to be irrelevant. And I think the millennial and the Gen Z consumer is actually telling us that all the time. He never listened to us on radio, but the moment you put it on podcast, he's listening to you there. So you're suddenly realizing that, these customers are coming there. Those consumers are coming there, and you need to be relevant for him in whichever way he deems it fit. He's not giving you the choice. You need to necessarily be there. If you want him, you go where he is rather than expecting that he'll come where you are. Of course, he'll come where you are if you have a strong enough case for him and a strong enough reason for him to come to your platform. But don't expect him to stay there for long. I mean, he will stay there for some time. If he finds something else, he'll move on. So you need to be relevant. You need to be tracking him all the time. You need to be making sure that you're being relevant for him, every day. You're being agile, you're being nimble-footed, you're pivoting when required. You're making sure that you are, observing, listening, and therefore reacting to what he does and what the new trend is, or what the new what is current right now. So that's really what the learning for me is. And one of those, so if you summarize it, it's really that you have to be constantly learning.
Amazing.
And adapting to whatever's happening.
Fabulous. So I'm going to ask you one more question on podcast before I'm moving. For someone who's built such an amazing podcast portfolio and actually re-engineered a lot of your old content into great podcasts, Ramesh, what goes into making a good podcast?
I think, of course, the creator is important, the content is important. But I think more than all of that stuff, you can have content of all kinds. It is a platform where all kinds of content works, right? And you don't have to be the most popular content. You don't know. I do a Mahabharat or a Ramayana with millions of listens, and I do a podcast called A Millennial Mind or a tech podcast and so on, which has limited but core listenership, right? So you have to just be very clear: what are you doing? What is it that you're doing it for? Who is it that you're doing it for? And making sure that you're doing it right for that consumer. Number two, I think more important than anything else, I find in many of these mediums, it is about being consistent. It's about being there regularly. And you can't do a podcast one off and then forget about it. And then tomorrow, then, 2 weeks later, then suddenly say, okay, now I'm going to do another podcast. Doing something, do it consistently, do it, in a manner that at least the hygiene things are taken care of. People will excuse issues that there might be technically or in terms of things that you may not have done perfectly, but one thing that will not be excused in doing podcasting is really consistency and making sure that if a consumer is expecting you should be available. That's my advice to podcasts.
That's fascinating. So let me move to the next segment now, which is a few questions for you personally. I think I have time for 3, maybe 4 questions. My first question to you, Ramesh, is that what have been some of, if you were to look back at life, what would you say are 3 key milestones in your life or your career?
I've never seen it like that. For me, it's been a continuing journey. And if you look at my career, I've moved multiple industries, multiple geographies, multiple careers in a sense. So it's really been taking one step at a time and making sure that there's something new that's happening every time. So I've mostly sort of, gone around startups, turnarounds, and so on. Something new has always excited me. So, along the way, we've created 5-6 companies together. Along the way, 4-5 companies have got transformed or, in a way, re-envisioned and repurposed. So these are the real things that have given me satisfaction. Over the last year or so, we set up 5-6 new businesses. Right? We set up a podcasting business. We set up a health and wellness business. We set up a international audio syndication business. We run the drive time show in New York, Los Angeles, LA, San Francisco, London now. From India, almost like a music process outsourcing business. We set up a classifieds online business. We've done a couple of other businesses like this, all completely different from each other. And that's what's given me the satisfaction. So no real milestones as such, but every couple of years I try to, do something new, and that's kept me going. And that's really kept me motivated and excited.
Fantastic. So therefore, a question to you then is that for someone who's done so many different things in so many different organizations, as you look back, what does success mean to Ramesh from where you stand today?
I think for me, it's always been about creating something. Always been about getting people together and giving that feeling of building something, making something, turning something around. That's given me that feeling of success.
Right.
That's really what's motivated me. That's what's got me going. So creation is to me and in my mind, what gives me the greatest satisfaction and what gives me the greatest joy.
Fantastic. And what or who inspires you to keep pushing yourself to do so many different things?
I think more than anybody else. I mean, I don't have any of those, larger, iconic people who are inspiring me. I think just this keeping pace with youngsters and keeping pace with younger people and keeping pace with their learnings and making sure that you're constantly learning new things. That's really what's inspiring me. And seeing younger and younger people. I mean, I've practiced reverse mentoring all the time. Everything that I've learned in every new business that I've learned, I've had a lot of young people working for me, and just observing them, listening to them, absorbing whatever it is that is happening is really what's inspiring. And just that more than anything else, or more than learning from the guys who've done it all. More than that, it's learning from the people who are working with you and the younger people who are working.
Fabulous. And my last question to you, Ramesh, now, and this is for the thousands of people who will listen to us and view the interview. You've reached right to the apex of, the professional world that you have been a part of. What would your advice be to a young individual who's starting off on her or his career in the corporate world?
My advice, quite counterintuitively, will be to not get stuck on anything, be a constant learner, observe, listen, absorb continuously. Things could change dramatically. Organizations and individuals who got stuck in the past or stuck in their past successes or stuck in their past learnings are the ones that you see failing nowadays, right? The biggest of iconic brands have failed. The most successful of people who have, felt that they've done it all have also failed. Right. So I think it's to be a constant learner. It's to be a constantly agile while learning. And don't get stuck to those things. I mean, those old things that people used to say of how long have you worked in one place, and are you, because you've shifted companies or shifted industries, are you sort of disloyal or not the right kind of candidate? All of those questions are, I think, behind us.
Right.
I think right now it's really about, are you learning? Are you learning fast enough, and are you updating yourself all the time? And I think that's that. If you did that, you would never become irrelevant. Otherwise, you have an expiry date, which you will work hard to change.
Incredible. Ramesh, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you for, educating me on so much about the digital world, about the radio channels, on podcasting. Thank you again and good luck.
Thank you very much, Ashutosh. Look forward to catching up with you again.
Likewise.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.